Welcome to the Security Champions podcast. I'm the host, Michael Birch. I'm the Director of Application Security, and I lead a lot of the content development, champion programs. I'm super passionate about evangelizing developers to adopt security practices. Today, I'm joined with one of our security engineers that actually helps us create sandbox lessons to teach developers secure coding practices. His name is Noah Morse. And I would love to have you tell me a little bit about yourself and what has been your security journey.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, first of all, what I do here is I make content. I make a lot of the break fix content. So some of the sandbox type content that you'll see where you have to break into a vulnerable application and then I show you how to fix that. A lot of those are made by me. I got into cybersecurity because that's what I went to school for. I studied networks and security at the University of Pittsburgh. That was my big focus. And then I went to work at one of the big banks, and I started with some security stuff there, working on a scanning and discovery team. And then it wasn't long until I found my way to an API team, working on some API tooling stuff. And that's where I really got into software development, and I fell into that for the last few years, which brought me over here to Security Journey. So I got to combine what I went to school for and what I've been working with, security and application development, and it's been great.
I love that background because it has a lot of the same tones of what I did, right? When I first was getting out, I got my degree. Mine was in like security and systems security, right? So it's a lot of theoretical stuff. I will say not a lot of hands-on practical stuff from that type of an education. I definitely remember getting out of college when I first tried to get a job. I did an interview, and I came out of the interview realizing, wow, I don't know anything, because the things that I was asked were very, very, very technical, very hands-on, very specific questions of implementation. So did kind of the same route, went and got the developer job and worked that for a bit and eventually was able to bring together AppSec. So I think in this space, that type of background is so powerful, right? Having that true developer background and then bringing in that security knowledge with it and being able to bring them together. Because there's a lot of people out there that do security that haven't done the foundational work to have the empathy of the people they're working with or understand that they really understand the infrastructure they're working in. They can run a scanning tool, give back some advice, but if I can't read your code, like how helpful do I actually become in that process, right? One thing I do love is the sandbox lessons, right? And I'm going to take a moment, try not to be sales pitchy about our product on this podcast, but what I do want to emphasize how cool of an experience that is. So tell me a little about what that's like as a job, where you're living day in and day out, creating broken apps, vulnerable apps, and then trying to come up with these kind of cool solutions and way to teach people how to fix them.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. I think app development by itself is just super fun, and I think security as a whole is really interesting. So it's nice that I get to combine both of those things that I really enjoy, and I get to teach those things to other people. So that's one of the things I really like. I like taking these complicated processes, something like encryption or hashing or an IDOR vulnerability or something like that, and I like being able to break it down into simple pieces, show how it looks in an application to a learner, and then teach them how to fix it, how to avoid stuff like that. So that's what I really like doing.
I will say one of my favorite parts about working here, it's and I say this to other people all the time, it's the best education I've ever been paid to have, right? Like that's 90% of the work is learning new stuff and then translating that to somebody else. The best education I've ever been able to have. Well, the real reason we're coming in for the talk today is we went to Black Hat this year, and I would love to interview you about that experience. What was Black Hat like? What were the talks about? What did you see? What did you learn? Try to impart some of that knowledge that we were able to institutionalize by attending and release that out to the general audience that wasn't able to actually be there and gain some of this knowledge. But before we jump into that, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, get a word from our sponsor, and then we'll jump back into the conversation.
Awareness programs don't provide enough in-depth learning. Ensure your technical teams are getting the knowledge they need to build safer software. Security Journey provides hands-on secure coding training in an application sandbox that allows developers to identify, break, and fix common security vulnerabilities. Give your developers the opportunity to recognize and prevent common and emerging security issues before they become a problem. Visit securityjourney.com to try our training today.
Welcome back to the Security Champion podcast. I'm joined here with Noah, and he is one of our AppSec engineers that helps us build vulnerable sandboxes to teach about vulnerable applications and how to secure them and how to do secure coding practices. Recently, we both were able to go to Black Hat this year, and it was a really great experience. Now, I will admit, part of my job, I spent most of my time sitting in a booth selling our product. Got to get out a little bit, but most of my perspective, as I could tell you, is what people were selling at Black Hat. And I will say this is going to probably align with a lot of the things we're going to say about the talks, because as everyone can probably guess, AI is in everything now. If you're a vendor on the floor and you don't have an AI sticker somewhere in your booth, you feel like you stand out like a sore thumb, because that's pretty much what everybody's doing. And I think that was a lot of the same thing we saw in a lot of the talks. So what we're gonna do in this format is I'm gonna talk to Noah. We're gonna ask about the different talks he went into and kind of give a little bit of information of what we learned from those talks. And I actually had the honor to join Noah with the first talk we went to, and it was about AI and security. And I'm not going to spoil any of some of the hot lines that came from it, so I'm going to drop it over to you, Noah, and tell me, what was that talk? Who gave it? What was it about?
Yeah, so the first talk, like you said, we got to go to it together. It was one of the first talks of the conference, and it was one of the best ones, too. It was from Rich Herring. He's an NVIDIA developer, so he's been working a lot with LLMs and AIs and really working behind the scenes on what powers all of the AI and LLM stuff we've all been working with. So that was cool to get his perspective. Really smart guy. Did a really good job of breaking down how LLMs work, like what they are in the most essential form, which is really just a next token generator. So he did a good job of like laying out that, hey, all these LLMs are doing is figuring out that next word and serving it up to you, and then figuring out when to stop. So they'll tell you a sentence, and then figure out if this is a good spot to end the sentence. Are we at a preposition? Probably shouldn't end the sentence there. Is the answer concluded? Have we given enough context? Either end the sentence or give a next token. So I thought that was really interesting. It was a good way to break it down in like a super simple format for everybody. And then he transitioned into talking about security with LLMs. Which was great. It was really good for me to hear. I'm working on a lot of the AI LLM security content here. And one of the things that I really like to focus on is that the best way to secure any sort of LLM or AI application is to just treat it like a normal application. All the same rules we all know, they still apply. Nothing's different. You have to make sure that you have the right safeguards in place like you would with any other application. So he drilled that point home. Which I was like, okay, this is good. It's nice to get that reinforcement from Rich Herring, an NVIDIA developer who really knows all there is to know.
One of the most powerful statements I think he said that I loved was, and what you guys just now realized is, I just tricked you all into an AppSec talk by labeling it AI, right? Because that was the reality of the conversation. Half the talk, I feel, was like, look, half these things we're calling vulnerabilities that AI is doing that's AI-centric, it's not. And what's the key phrase he kept using is like, that's the way it's supposed to work, right?
Yeah.
Like RAG we talked about. That's that augmentation using other exterior data, right? He was basically saying, oh, this will happen if you use RAG this way. But then it's like, well, yeah, but that's what it's supposed to do. That same thing we I think he discussed when he was talking about the way that tokens are served and the way that it's basically just trying to decide the next best answer. That's the way it's supposed to work. It's a lot of these vulnerabilities, I would say, from even the OWASP top 10 is actually just from a lack of education and understanding the underlying system and what it's actually trying to do for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you just pull back that veil a little bit and learn about the system that you're dealing with, it'll make a lot more sense. Like if you treat your LLM like a normal application, you follow some basic rules. Don't log too much information. Don't log sensitive information. Don't give, if your LLM has access to privileged information, make sure that only people that also have access to that privileged information are able to talk to the LLM. You don't want to have some trade secrets that your LLM is trained on and then giving that information out to the public and letting them interact with it. So just basic security knowledge will take you pretty far.
So closing up that talk, once again, security is not changing here. Apply the same security principles while we're looking at these AI systems. What was the second talk you went and looked at?
So the second talk was Know Before. The title was The Scary Long Game Social Engineering Attacks That Most of Us Would Fall For. Kind of a long title, but it was another really good talk where we got to learn about these long form spear phishing campaigns, which, just to break it down, most phishing attacks are casting a super wide net. You're trying to just spam out a bunch of information sorry, my cat's distracting me. You're trying to spam out just a bunch of emails or SMSs or anything like that to cast a really wide net and see who responds. It doesn't have to be targeted. It's just like, hey, your bank account is compromised. Click this link. But spear phishing campaigns are way more targeted. So they'll try to find a CEO or something. Maybe they'll have some inside information about a deal that they're working on, a partnership that they're working on, and they'll target a phishing campaign against that CEO, maybe pretending to be that partnership, maybe pretending to be a new sponsor or something like that, in the hopes that the CEO is like, oh, I'm familiar with this company. I've been waiting for an email from them. I've been waiting for just this thing. And then they click on it, log in, give their credentials, and it's all over.
Now, I will say, like, I definitely understand that big difference between the most common versus spear phishing. Spear phishing, I would assume, is a lot more rare, just from the amount of effort that has to go into these longer campaigns and the research and everything else. Was there any cool insights you got from that talk?
Yeah, I have some notes here. Give me a second to reference them because there were some really cool stats. So, like you just said, spear phishing, it accounts for 0.1% of all phishing attacks, which is not a lot. It's really hard to spearfish. It's really hard to spearfish, but what's really interesting is that even though it's only 0.1% of all attacks, it's responsible for 2/3 of all break-ins.
Wow, that kind of makes sense to me, right? I think that our general security awareness training is really good at telling people like, hey, don't click on links, don't respond to random texts, like those type of things that we're all getting pretty used to. I will say maybe the training around those higher echelon individuals, those people that need to be really aware from those most sophisticated attacks, I could absolutely see falling victim to more often.
Yeah, I agree. I have a couple anecdotes about this. I'm sure we all do, but the short one is that it was maybe 2 weeks into me starting a security journey before I got an email from the CEO asking me to give him a call on his personal line. I'm sure he would have asked me to pick up some Google Play gift cards if I had actually called. But yeah, the targeted spear phishing attacks are real, and they're becoming more common because they are so successful.
Oh yeah, I will say this. I think it was right after our acquisition and merger that I was immediately hit up with like Joe hit me. He was like, "Hey man, I can't get on the phone right now. Can you send me go get me a quick card and send me some cash? I need to do something real quick." I'm like okay. No, let me reach out to Joe and let everybody else in the company know that we're being targeted. But yeah, definitely interesting realm of the side, that social engineering side. It's a very hard part to defend against. All right, let's move on to the next talk. So what was the next thing that you went and heard at Black Hat?
So the next one was, let's see, relationships matter, reconstructing the organizational and social structure of a ransomware gang. So,
wow. All right.
yeah,
So what was this about? I was not expecting that when you said relationships matter to end on the sentence ransomware gang.
yeah, it was pretty interesting. Really, I suppose it was about some leaked chat log information from a ransomware gang. I think that's where the source of the information came from. And these researchers were doing some analysis on the chat messages to try to learn about the inner workings of the ransomware gang. So trying to see like what type of the conversational manner between different people, if you're being very professional if you're saying sir, if you're saying thank you, it probably shows that this is like a boss talking to a subordinate, so building like a relationship there. But if it's more casual between two people, maybe talking about not work activities, what you're doing on the weekend, stuff like that, then maybe it's a little bit, maybe that's more likely to be like a peer-to-peer type of relationship. So doing this analysis on all of these chat logs and trying to figure out the relationship of this whole ransomware gang and see what insights they could learn from that.
Well, that's super interesting. Basically, taking the behavioral patterns and then mapping out the organization itself based on that. That's definitely interesting topic. And it's interesting. It's because it's something we all do without thinking, right? Like how much information you give just on the way you interact with people. Like me and you talk as at a different level than I would go up and necessarily talk to the CEO at, right? We're all friends, but there's a different type of interaction there, and the way you present yourself is going to be different. So it's very interesting how you're able to leverage that for us to better understand these people doing these offensive activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a lot of good insights they had there too. Like one of the big things that they learned was that these communities are a little bit boring, the ransomware gangs. They're really organized and they have this hierarchical structure to them. So there are these bosses, these directors, managers, and so on and so forth. So they do have like a structure to them, and their whole goal is just like focused on this long-term survival, kind of like a business. They want to stay in business for as long as they can so that they can keep doing their ransomware attacks. It's pretty interesting.
You've just like you hit my heart. This sounded like startup life. That's what it sounded like to me. We have the full structure. We're just trying to stay afloat until we get acquired or make it big. That's like startup light out the box. It's funny.
That's
it's
what
funny
it is.
to think about it that way, because I think we all have this like Hollywood idea of all these just like crazy intense people in these foreign countries and crazy relationships. And it's just not true. It sounds like they're just kind of, good old business, mom and pop shop.
That's really it. They're doing their best, building their desks by themselves and living the startup life, except they're attacking multi-million or billion-dollar businesses at the same time.
That's such an interesting insight, and it actually gives you, once again, I think one of the other things that I like to drive home with this too is when we think about the people that are attacking us, right? These people that are doing our applications harm, trying to steal money. I think one of the things is we personify them into this symbol of something, and then it almost dehumanizes them. And I don't mean that as a way that we should be like, oh, feel bad for the people attacking us. But when you lose empathy and understanding of the person on the other side of the line, you may become complacent. You may not actually act in a way that's as defensive, or you might not respect how sophisticated they might be, right? Because they're no longer in your mind this human thing. They're this idea of an attacker, where that's another person on the other end of the line. They have feelings, they make mistakes, they have emotions, they act the same that we do. And when we actually take a moment to appreciate that can actually, I think, help us as defenders to make sure we're accounting for the human factor in the way we architect our defense structures.
Yeah, I think that goes both ways. They prey on the fact that we're humans too, and we're vulnerable, and that maybe we're susceptible to clicking on links or falling for some type of a scam or something like that. But they're human too, which can actually help us. It's something to keep in mind. But I don't remember if it was at this talk or a different one. But one of these ransomware gangs would put up like a help portal. Once they locked up all of your business's information, they'd give you a link to like a little chat help support thing, of being like, where you could go and talk to them and say, hey, my stuff's locked out, what do I do? And they say, well, you give me this much Bitcoin and you get it back. But it was pretty interesting to see that. Like sometimes they were apologetic in the chats. They'd feel bad for the people. So I don't know, maybe there's some way to leverage that human connection there. Probably not, but
probably
maybe.
Not. But it's interesting because I do remember hearing about this, because I think there's a whole thing going on. I don't know, it was LinkedIn or some other social media, where basically they had better customer support than we get in most of our applications in the U.S., right? Or some of those big name apps. They're like some of the best support you'll ever get through this ransomware chat.
Yeah. So super interesting stuff as well.
All right, so let's moving on from the ransomware. What's the next talk you went and saw?
All right, this one doesn't get better, but this one's about doxing to doorstep is what it's called, exposing privacy intrusion techniques used by hackers for extortion. So it does get more compelling, but it gets maybe even a little darker than the ransomware stuff. So just
Okay,
a
so
heads
tell
up
me
and a
the
warning.
details. What happened here?
Yeah. So I will start off with a bit of a warning that some of the information in here was a little bit violent and a little bit dark and scary. So I'm gonna clean it up a little bit from the talk that I went to. I feel like that's a good idea. But in general, it was talking about these different privacy intrusion techniques. Um, there's a website that's really popular in the doxing community. It's also kind of organized and weird, but maybe a little bit more underground than some of the ransomware gangs. And what they'll do is they'll take somebody's private information and they'll post it up to this website. And they have two options. They can either make it public immediately or make it private and I believe like semi-shareable. So they can put somebody's private information up and then send it to that person and say, hey, if you don't give me this amount of Bitcoin or this amount of whatever, then I'm going to make all of this information public. Um, and it doesn't even have to be Bitcoin. The speaker just had a pretty desirable username on some online game, and the people wanted that, so they doxed him and said, if you don't sell your account to us, then we're gonna publish all of your private information, your street address and your phone number and whatnot. Which is bad enough as it is. That's already an invasion of privacy. The follow up to that is something that I won't get too into, but they refer to it as violence as a service, and you can pay people to intimidate people that you want. So that's kind of the follow up. If you don't give up your Bitcoin, don't give up your screen name, whatever it is that you have, it can kind of get a little bit more dangerous after the fact.
Yeah, that's some scary stuff. Really intense. Um, Curious, like what was the were there any like walkaways from that? Basically saying, hey, this is what you should be thinking about.
Yeah, so I think there's two things I want to talk about. One, the important part of the talk, or maybe like what it was really about, was the privacy intrusion techniques and how they work. Because I thought that was like the technical part that we could all learn something from. So what a lot of these doxers do is that they can purchase a .gov email address, either in the States or in a different country. It's different prices for different ones. And then using that .gov email address, they can basically find a way to do I don't remember the name, an emergency data request. So they can put this emergency data request in to social media companies like Facebook or TikTok or something, and they can say, hey, I'm this government agency with this employee. I need this data about this user, and I need it within the next 48 hours or so. And a lot of the times the social media companies will just give that information away. So now all of your private information that wasn't public, that was like tied to your account, can now be given away to these attackers. So you really want to make sure that you're keeping as much information about yourself private, even if it doesn't seem like it's public. These companies, they do have a lot of your data, and it can be taken from them too. So be aware of that.
All right, scary stuff out in the world. What
Yeah.
is the next talk? What are we moving on to?
All right. Let's hope it's lighthearted. It's not. How hackers changed the media and the media changed hackers. It is a little bit, but yeah, that was the talk. It was a little more conversational, a little less formal, and it was basically one woman who works at companies. I think she's like a consultant or some type of works for a consultant firm when companies go through some type of a breach, and she helps them manage the media aspect of that. And then there were three people that are work in different parts of the media that cover some of these data breaches. So it was fun. It was a little bit argumentative, or maybe not argumentative, but you could tell there was like some strife between the woman who works at the company and the media reporters that deal with how they publicize this information. But it made for like a fun conversation. So That was the next one. It was also pretty interesting.
That's awesome, and that's an interesting aspect of it too, right? I think there's a lot of the world that feeds off of incidents, right? Media is definitely one of them. That's kind of like that's what it's there for, right? News or anything else. There incidents happen. That's kind of the lifeblood of those mediums. But I see that a lot in our industry also, right? And in security industry, there's a lot of organizations where big incidents happen and we're influenced by them and we influence them back because we immediately jump on, we start talking about them, not just practitioners, but as organizations, and we see how we can leverage those situations to talk about important topics. It's kind of an interesting, the complexity of these relationships are a little bit more than I think people give them credit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things I learned was that these hackers will try to take advantage of that complexity. So they know that these companies don't want this information to go public. They don't want it to go public in a bad light. And these companies want to try to control whatever narrative comes out with it. They want to say that they have things covered. They want to give information that they can. They want to make sure that they still have trust, or that their customers still have trust in them. And sometimes people in the media might want to capitalize on this information. They want the people to know, like, hey, you may be at risk. This may be going on. So there's a lot of complex dynamics there, and the hackers will play into that a bit. They'll take information. They'll say, we're going to go to this journalist. We're going to go public with this information. We're going to let them know. And they'll also go to the journalists and say, hey, like, me and you, we're going to take down this big company. Like, I'm going to give you this great scoop. You're going to have such a good article about it. And they'll try to, like, befriend them and work with them and say, like, hey, we have something juicy for you to tell. And the journalists are very like, I don't like you. We need to get this straight. I'm not a fan of you as a hacker. We're not doing anything together. So a lot of interesting dynamics all around.
Yeah, I would say that, and my hope is that most any ethical journalist would not feed into that frenzy.
Yeah.
All right, so what's up next in the docket on our lineup of talks?
Yeah, this one was just for me. It was modern anti-abuse mechanics in competitive video games. So I
Nice.
can't say I got a lot of great work takeaways or security knowledge out of this, but it was a lot of fun talking about different hacks in competitive video games.
I mean, I have some interest here. I got to hear. What's one of the cool takeaways from that talk?
So there's a lot of fun takeaways,
Yeah.
different deterrents that they use to stop people from hacking or cheating in video games. So some things that they'll do is like add in hallucinations, so add in like fake enemies behind you that are shooting at you, that make you think like you have a real enemy behind you that'll distract you. Maybe they'll turn up gravity to like 1,000% if they suspect that you're having that you have some cheat client installed, so that you go really slow or can't jump. They'll put you in, like, I think quicksand is something they'll do where it's like you're trudging through quicksand, so you can't really move super fast. So there's a lot of fun mechanics that they use to mess with hackers or mess with cheaters. So that was one takeaway. There's a lot of like normal ones too. Ban their account, mute them.
I think
Try
one
to
of the interesting
validate
parts I
memory.
see. So my daughter, my 11-year-old, she's deep dive into VR right now, right? She's
Okay.
all over the VR, and she has this game she plays. I don't know what it's called. It's she's like half of a gorilla, and she runs around with her arms and goes and interacts with people, right? But they get to do all these different like mini games. I think is the whole point of the interaction. And that's all she talks about now. It's like I don't think she truly knew the term like hacker or mods or all this other stuff, but now that's all she talks about. And I can hear upstairs yelling at somebody that's, oh, you're using a mod and everything else, you're cheating. Like it's just interesting. It's interesting where it like kind of shows up. But then she talks about, she's like, oh, I want to buy this thing. She's like, but if I buy it, I think they'll ban me. I'm like, then don't buy it. Then don't get it. Don't add it to your game.
Yeah. Leave the wall hacks in the cart. We don't need to check out with those.
All right, so coming up next, what was the next conversation?
Let's see. The next one was about quantum computers. It was called Quantum Security Myths, Facts, and Realities. I think we've all heard about how quantum computers are going to break cryptography. It's going to be the end of security as we know it. Passwords are going to be cracked in zero point 0.4 seconds because they're so computationally fast. Um, so I went to this to try to learn a little bit more about that. I suspect that's why everybody went to this talk, to learn a little bit more about that. How true is that? How worried should we be about quantum computers? How much of this is hype? How much of this is real? Um, so that was the gist of the talk.
So are we in danger? What's kind of the takeaway? Because I have a huge interest in this. Like a little side thing that I don't know a lot of people know. I'm studying physics on my free time as like one of my side passions, right? So this is definitely of interest to me. Is this real? Like, is this something we need to be that worried about?
Yeah, so the answer, I think, is not yet. Um, Seemed to be the gist of it. And there were a couple of caveats with what we learned. It's basically that quantum computers are really good at a couple things, at really specific things that they're doing. So they're not going to just like break everything that we know and change how computers work and function like at their core level or anything. Maybe it can work through a bunch of hashes really fast, but we're not there yet. It doesn't seem like we're anywhere near there yet. The one guy on the panel was saying that he doesn't think we'll get there in his lifetime. So maybe in your kid's lifetime they'll be breaking encryption with a quantum computer. But one of the other speakers had said that it's a bit of a controversial take. Not everybody agrees with it, but some do. That there's a real chance that we'll have quantum algorithms running on normal computers before we even have them running on quantum computers. Um, I'm not sure what that means exactly, but it sounds pretty interesting to me.
I will say one of the big things I saw when walking around the floor, there's a few places and a few big talk about quantum cryptography, like quantum based cryptography. I haven't done a deep dive into yet, so I'm not gonna embarrass myself and pretend that I know what I'm talking about around that topic. But it's definitely something we're seeing more often, and it's definitely gonna be more relevant as we go forward as part of the conversation. All right, leaving quantum behind, what's our next conversation?
Okay, so this is the last one I have. It's called another ransomware one. Behind enemy lines, engaging and disrupting ransomware web panels. This one was very interesting. I believe the speaker also gave a talk at DEF CON later in the week. He is he's at least a penetration tester by night. I'm not sure what his day job was, but his goal was essentially to break into these ransomware gangs, try to disrupt whatever operations they have going on, and just try to learn whatever it was that he could. So there were really interesting takeaways here. I have some quotes from him, one of which was that most of these ransomware gangs have better cybersecurity than most Fortune 500 companies. They're really hard to get into. He had, I don't have the exact numbers, but he had tried to break into like 120 or so, maybe like 200 or so different ransomware gangs, and he was successful on 3.5, is what he said, which is a pretty low success rate. On other organizations that he's tried to break into, I don't remember if it was like companies he had worked for, or he's done this with different types of cyber criminals, different areas. He's had like a 50% success rate. So bringing it down to 3 out of 100 and some, really, really something to think about.
What's interesting when we talk like this, that what I find really interesting is that we start bringing all these talks about ransomware groups and stuff together, and you start talking about behavioral, you start talking about organization, you start talking about security practices. I mean, they sound like security companies, right? That's the degree at which these people are operating with. That what my takeaway from that is as security people, we need to understand that these people aren't just out there throwing shotguns in the wind hoping they get something. These people are organized. They have structure. They have good security practices. They're defenders of their own. They're not just offensive. And what that tells me is they understand the defense really well also, right? So let's get out of this mindset that these are just attackers. These are defenders also, and they understand that defensive mindset, which makes them more dangerous, which makes us have to be on our top game. And to be honest, in a lot of the ways, I also think that most of us defenders need to understand offense to be good defenders. And to be good offense, you have to understand defense. I do love the industry that people love to specialize, but you need to specialize with the appreciation that you still need to be a jack of all trades if you're going to be successful in any of these specialties.
Yeah, I agree. That's something that's super important, especially in penetration testing too, because there's no like right answer or one way to get into a system, to break into it. You need a really good understanding of all of the different operating systems that you may run into, all of the different penetration techniques that you may use. You have to know about networks. You have to know about app security. You need a really strong foundation, and then maybe you can have a couple really strong pillars within that.
Yeah, that's so true. So I'm going to be wrapping us up here. Thank you, Noah, for giving us your time, your insights, telling us about your black hat journey. To the rest of our audience, thank you for giving us your time, listening in. And just on the same note, I always end. Remember, security is a journey, not a destination.